the supposed pro rata 20% share was supposed to be segregated out and separate outside of the whole general revenue funds and stuff. But the way it's been going, of course, all these years, is basically, like, for example, airport monies, revenues are going to like the Department of Transportation revenues and all this kind of stuff. And so the money is basically commingled all here and there. When OHA was suing over the revenues at that was a big issue. And so that's why they ended up doing those settlements for so-called back in 1990, shucks, when was that, 92 maybe? That's when the YHA administration did the first one for like $120 million that they had the back revenues. So because they couldn't really figure out how much was, supposedly, they would negotiate one price for those back revenues, and that's how they got that money. Then you had the airport suits that are going on in the mid-90s, and they were looking specifically at like the airport revenues because we all knew that the airports were having, huge amount of money through places like duty-free that weren't being collected, first of all. And then secondly, even if they were collected, the percentages wasn't getting into OHA's hands. So that's why OHA was involved with that suit back in the mid-1990s. So that's why this whole settlement that's going on with OHA right now, the proposed settlement that OHA is doing with the legislature right now, this is part of that. They're basically just trying to say, see your question, where the revenues are going, what they're basically saying is that they don't even know how much of the revenues was there or how much exactly is there, so why don't we just settle for some kind of price to kind of cover, that question from this year to that year. On top of that, this is the one that the most important part. It's not just the revenue. Is that the question over termination of any kind of future claims in negotiation of the revenue. See, that's the part that's kind of, they're trying to sneak in there and stuff. So that's why, as of now, OHA is limited to their $15 million per year that they're paid out for. So the whole question of it being 20% is kind of out the window at this time. And they basically say the OHA was making, could get too much money, so let's just settle it for $15 million per year. So that's the part with the OHA side. So although the state law says it's supposed to be 20% of this and that and this, OHA as to the legislature has been just getting allocated $15 million a year.
Okay, so if the statute specifies or requires them to do that after all these years and they fail to do it, then they're negligent.
Should be. You would think would be the idea that they're not doing their fiduciary responsibilities.
Right. So if they're falling short of fulfilling their fiduciary responsibilities, don't we as the people have the right to go ahead and have them fired?
We would think that would be the logic. We would think that would be the logic.
If I work for ABC Corporation, and let's not use ABC because they exist, XYZ. If I was a general manager for XYZ Corporation and I lost $1 million and had no way to account for it, I'm out of there. I'm history. And I think it's a great disservice to the people, and sometimes we do this to ourselves. If we know that that is the important thing to do and have them removed, let's remove them.
The problem with the removal part, the main obstacle to that is what for us today? Well, who puts them in? Well, we only actually...
That's right, you're right.
My understanding, and I could be wrong, so I don't be cited for this. My understanding, Hawaiians represent 18%
That's right.
of the voting bloc. In other words, the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, their representatives, 82% of the votes which put those guys in do not come from Hawaiians who even vote.
Wow.
So the perspective is, in other words, that's why you get the same characters getting in and out. The fraud has always been, for me, is that at least before, you could argue, right? This is prior to the whole Rice Cayetano stuff. You could argue that those Hawaiians who were, or non-Hawaiians who were representing Hawaiians at OHA, did represent a particular body who voted in India. At one time only Hawaiians voted. But once it became, the vast majority who voted in India being non-Hawaiians, today there's no way OHA can make the claim that they represent Hawaiian people.